My name is Charles Hopkins, and I hold the UNESCO Chair in Reorienting Education Towards Sustainability. Now, as the UNESCO Chair, we're often asked, what is a UNESCO Chair? What do they do? And what does your chair do? So let me try to answer some of those questions. First of all, our UNESCO Chair is located at York University in Toronto, Canada. York is Canada's third largest university, has a strong focus on addressing sustainability. And beginning in 2020, our university-wide academic plan has accepted the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as their grand challenge. Secondly, regarding the UNESCO chairs, the UNITWIN UNESCO Chairs program was launched in 1992. At the time, the Director General, Federico Mayor, was himself a renowned Spanish researcher and scientist. As an academic, he saw an engagement with academia as a way for UNESCO, as the agency responsible for education, science, culture, and communication, to be cutting edge and to enhance at the same time the world's higher education collective capability. He saw it as a way to both advance research, program development and implementation, and also facilitating collaboration amongst academia. The UNESCO UNITWIN program fosters then university twinning and networking for a north-south and south-south cooperation. And today the numbers have grown to approximately 830 UNESCO chairs and UNITWIN networks spanning the leading institutions right around the world. Now, a UNESCO chair is established at a university by means of an agreement with UNESCO to initiate programs in UNESCO's mandated areas to advance teaching, research, and community service, but in themes that are a priority to UNESCO. Now, since its adoption in 2015, the overall goal of all UN agencies is to facilitate the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And at the heart of the 2030 Agenda are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs for short. All UN member states and all nations have agreed to endorse and collectively work on these. Now, they are supposed to be seen not individually as much, but as a collective. They work in an integrated and integrative fashion. They're aspirational, and they're meant to solve the most pressing issues for the world, to try and create a more peaceful and just future. Now, the particular goal that UNESCO is responsible for is SDG 4. It's the vision is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. It has 7 targets, and in particular, the one that guides our chair is target 4.7, which focuses on the need for education for sustainable development and global citizenship education. 4.7 also, though, is targeted at all levels of not only formal education, but also informal and non-formal, and includes public awareness campaigns and training. Now, I mentioned that there was a need for synergistic approaches to the SDGs, and nowhere is that truer than for SDG 4 in general, but also for 4.7. The United Nations General Assembly, on 2 occasions, in 2019 and in 2017, has pointed out that the SDG 4.7 in particular was not only an integral element of all of SDG 4 on quality education, but it was a key enabler for all of the other SDGs. So it is of great importance. And because of this importance, UNESCO, who is responsible for SDG 4, has developed a framework for specific work on SDG 4.7. And that guides the work of our chair here at York. There are 5 priority areas, and our work is really guided by priority area 3, that being building the capacity of educators. Now, it goes beyond that, however, to review even the purpose and values, things that underpin education in general, and is to address even the transformation of education itself. Now, how does our chair really work or operate? Well, in the beginning, we focused largely on teacher education institutions. Our chair, when it was launched in 1999, was the very first chair in education for sustainable development. Over the time, it has grown. We see that educating future generations for a sustainable future really is a purpose of all levels of education. So it is in that context. But if we look at the fields of interest where we are engaged, first of all, it's in the discussion around quality education, around SDG 4, and it's around really the idea of transforming education, the futures of education, which is a specific program, but also in that area in general. We also look at how we can be integral into the implementation of the ESD for 2030 framework, how we become engaged in that roadmap that I showed you. We're also extremely interested in how education for sustainable development can be a way of enhancing or improving the education of the vulnerable, the most marginalized, those who are least well served by today's education systems. And in particular, we focus on trying to improve the education of Indigenous youth. We look at improving communities. How can education, public awareness, understanding, training programs, and so on around sustainability make more sustainable communities? And we also look at greening education in general, in particular, higher education, colleges, technical and vocational education and training. So these 5 areas are really our primary fields of instance. Now, what kind of activities do we do? So the chair is primarily looking into research, into publishing, in particular, the development of policy. That's the role of UNESCO. Developing networks where we can conduct research and explore effective ways of implementing policy. We do consulting, we do a lot of conference speaking, chairing, and so on. And in particular, our implementation is usually through networks. Now, in our networks, we always sort of work in a participatory way with the members of our networks and other stakeholders to include global perspectives. How can we be locally relevant, culturally appropriate, so on, and work in an ethical manner? Now, our particular networks, there are 3. The first one is a global network spanning about 50 countries, looking at and working with teacher education institutions. This was our first one that we launched in 1999, and it has produced a lot of work. There are over 75 million teachers around the world, and The way to work we are focusing on is through the institutions that deliver not only pre-service education, but in-service education, to find effective ways for nations to reorient their teacher education programs to address sustainability. But we also ask very profound questions. You know, why are we educating people? Because until we know why we're education or why we're educating people, we really won't know what to teach, what to examine, you know, where to put priorities, what is the appropriate pedagogy, and so on. So these are areas that we are working in. A second large network regards it's really under Sustainable Development Goal 4.5, and that is trying to improve the education of the most vulnerable. And here we are looking at how can we use local, social, environmental, and economic sustainability issues as a way of delivering the core curriculum in a more effective way. Okay. So again, we're working in about 50 countries and conducting research that we negotiate and co-develop with the indigenous communities themselves. It is an effective way of us learning together. Right? And there is so much in indigenous wisdom and knowledge that can flow the other way back to us. Now, a third one. In March of 2020, we took on a new role in collaboration with the International Association of Universities, or IAU. The IAU has, to support the Sustainable Development Goals, has itself created a program, a global cluster of higher education for sustainable development. This is our clusters of universities from right around the world working on each of the Sustainable Development Goals. At York University, we coordinate the subcluster on SDG 4, that is education itself. And one of the specific actions underway is exploring the potential of a whole institution approach that goes beyond includes but goes beyond teaching, research, and community service to having the institution itself embed sustainability and to become a model of good and sustainable practice. So in conclusion, our UNESCO Chair has taken on a wide and encompassing mandate that looks at all education, but looks at it through a lens of sustainable development. I hope this introduction adds clarity to the roles of UNESCO chairs, but specifically the UNESCO chair at York University. Now, if there's any interest in further collaboration or synergy, here are some of the sources of additional information and links. We would love to hear from you. Thank you very much.